What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Striking Gold, your 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name's Rob Louder. That's Kyle Posey. And we cover the 49ers for everybody on the other side of the speaker, other side of the screen. Welcome. Welcome back. Welcome in. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you hanging out. Appreciate you giving us some of your time. Hope y'all are doing well. It's August 5th, man. I think the Hall of Fame game is tomorrow. Is it not? We're recording this on Wednesday, August 5th. And I believe the NFL Hall of Fame game is tomorrow. So whether you are a fan of preseason or not, tomorrow or today, because this usually goes live, if you're on the podcast side of things, this usually goes live early Thursday, there is a football game on. So again, I mean, just enjoy it, man. You'll be able to hear the sound of live football in your living room. Turn it up real loud. Turn it up real loud. Doesn't matter that it's preseason. And Roger Craig's going to be there, man. He's getting his gold jacket, so that'll be cool to see as well. KP, how are you, man?
I'm great. Great. Almost went to see old Raj get inducted, but yeah, it's nice to hear football things being talked about again. So we are so close to seeing the 49ers do live football things as well.
We are right there. When I don't even know when their first preseason game is. It's like a week and a half, right?
13.
Yeah. So, next weekend.
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah. Damn.
But probably not going to see too many guys, I would imagine, based on everything ever. Also, they have a joint practice as well. So, yeah, probably not going to see too many starters, I would say.
Cynthia said, "Hi, is this the beginning or the end?" This is absolutely the beginning. We if you're talking about this show, we just started, so you could not have been here at a better time.
About the 49ers.
Captain, now that's a funny question in regards to just the 49ers as a whole. Is this the beginning or the end? Which is maybe it was what she was saying to begin with. You know, I don't know if she was referring to this podcast. But I
think she just came up with the name of the podcast title.
I know. I need to totally go back because I put something about Brock Purdy. We're going to talk about Brock Purdy's rankings on the Athletics QB tier list, but I might need to change that. I feel like that right there is like can be more than just a podcast title. Like 100%. That may be the theme for this year. For the 49ers season. Is this the beginning or the end? Cynthia, I don't think you realized it, but you've just like
Thank you for your
subscribed
service.
Something greater. You know, like if they make a what am I going for here? Like a documentary on this season for the 49ers. I'm going to have to submit that as a title. You know what's funny? That documentary recently that came out, I can't remember who released it. There was that 49ers documentary recently where they had, and even like Tom Brady was on there talking about the 49ers. They actually emailed me, in which I forwarded to Blue Wire, asking to use the name Striking Gold for the name of that documentary. And all Blue Wire said back was, sure, use it. Just give them credit at the end of the credits or something. And then they're like, no, we'll just go with a different name. they were so, they didn't want to give a shred of credit. So which is kind of funny, but
no shout outs, sir.
in other news, someone should probably, even though he seems to be against someone going by his house and checking on him, someone should go check on Brandon Ayuk, because today the Commanders, who were apparently Brandon Ayuk's only reason for existing, like he was the Commanders' biggest fan, and I think he bought a $10 million house in Washington recently and was all over social media, obviously, like basically in a Commanders cheerleader uniform. And the Commanders today just signed Stephon Diggs. Now I guess that,
well thought out purchases.
Right. I guess they could sign both. I guess Stephon Diggs did not necessarily mean they can't sign Brandon Ayuk to some random league minimum deal, but do you think that him reading that news today took a little wind out of his sails?
Oh, I think there's no doubt, man. Think about everything that he's been doing. Just as you said, he's been going out of his way, not only to look like a fool online, but to tell people, hey, I'm going to be playing for the Commanders. And sure enough, the Commanders end up signing Stephon Diggs. They end up signing a player who just this year alone, or within the past calendar year, was in criminal trial and has civil lawsuits against him. And they're like, you know what? We'd rather have him than Brandon Ayuk. What do you say about how foolish that Ayuk has been, man?
I mean, we kind of figured that was going to be the case when just by the way Adam Peters answered that question, and the guy who asked the question got a lot of credit from the coach and Adam Peters, because he didn't ask about Brandon Ayuk. He just asked, does a player's social media activity matter to you guys? And they both just started laughing. They're like, we know what you're trying to do. But the answer was unequivocally yes. And he said it's not necessarily the first thing they look at for most. He was like, for most players. And now we have the Commanders going the way of Stephon Diggs. So it just keeps getting more not interesting. Interesting would not be the word I want to use for that. It's just sadly entertaining. It's so weird. It's so weird. He's probably just sitting in his closet staring at the wall right now. With
all he had to do, just what are the odds you think he knows he needs to sign some reinstatement papers to even play? Like, I would imagine he's not represented by the same people anymore, but I would imagine whoever is representing him, whoever's been in contact with him, has told him at least 12 times, hey man, reinstatement. You have to sign the papers or you are not going to play. And he's just turning a blind eye to it, could not care less about anything that he actually has to do to get on the field, but would rather show us that, he's holding he's in DC again. Thanks for
he that. Just wants to, Captain Honor said, well thought out, and Brandon Ayuk will never be in the same sentence. The dude just wants to stand in his closet and take money out of a backpack and throw it onto the ground. That's what he wants to do with his time. Man, I don't even know what to say. It just keeps getting weirder. Speaking of weirder, though, segue, the 49ers injury luck, despite things seeming very bad last episode, has not gotten any better. Like, I've got a list for you guys. I'm going to try and do it in one breath. I will not be able to succeed. But I'm going to try. Okay. So here's the current list of 49ers injuries. Some of them are very mild. Some of them are, none of them are the other best way of saying it. None of them other than Ricky. No, well, it's not the best way of saying it. Let's just begin. Okay. Defensive end Nick Bosa, soreness. Linebacker Dre Greenlaw, soreness. Defensive tackle Osa Odigizua, soreness. Wide receiver Mike Evans, quad. Wide receiver Deshaun Stribling, hamstring. Wide receiver Jacob Cowing, hip flexor. Wide receiver Christian Kirk, calf strain. Running back Jordan James, rib. Running back Kalen Black, groin. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk, broken finger. Gonna take a breath. Offensive lineman Vidarian Lowe, high ankle. Offensive lineman Carver Willis, concussion. Offensive lineman Brett Toth, undisclosed. Defensive end Sam Okuwanu, ankle. Defensive end Keon White, groin. Safety Malik Mustafa, hamstring. Defensive lineman Alfred Collins, shoulder, but he's working back in. Defensive line CJ West, also working back in. Tight end George Kittle is still out with his Achilles. Defensive end Michael Williams is still out with his knee. Wide receiver Ricky Pearsall is on IR for his knee surgery. Tight end Tanner McLaughlin had a knee injury. He was released. Defensive line William Bradley King had a back injury. He was released. Defensive lineman Andrew Farmer had a back injury. He was also released. And defensive end Michael Kamara tore his ACL and was also released. So that is the entire 49ers injury list. I did not add them up. I know it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 20 to 23. And again, I included some past injuries on there just to add some oomph to the list. But KP, tell me why it is the substation's fault.
They need to change their practice schedule and only practice once a week. That way, none of this happens. Think about it. They've done everything they could to change up whatever it needs to do so this doesn't happen. And once again, this does happen. So, man, it's guys on the list too that need to be playing. The running backs. You want to find out what you have in these young running backs in Kalen Black and Jordan James. You want to see if Jacob Cowing can stay healthy for more than 3 weeks. Like, there's so many things on here. Malcolm Mustafa is a big season for him, and it still is. All these guys, ideally, they're going to return and be fine. But the fact that you're missing nearly a quarter of your team on August 5, not a great look, man. The fact that you have to be asked, whether you're going to cancel joint practices, come on. Not great.
And Nick Wagner put on his little practice recap. Again, find Nick Wagner on Twitter X thing. Does a fantastic job covering training camp. And he said, by the end of Wednesday's practice, the Niners had 20 players, including the 3 on PUP, not participating because of injury. In 2024, they had 23 not practicing when they canceled joint practices with the Saints. And I think their joint practices are in like a week. I think it was the 11th, less than a week.
It's next week. Early next
Strawberry
week.
Rack said, am I the only one not freaking out? No, I hope you're not the only one freaking out. Like I said, none of those injuries, at least to the key players still on the roster, are serious. It's if none of them are serious, none of them are long-term injuries that we know of right now. But it's just business as usual for the 49ers. It's a little wild. I can guarantee you the 49ers have the biggest injury list of any NFL team in training camp right now. But it's not like there's been other NFL teams. Vets. Yeah, Captain Niner said vets with soreness isn't a big issue. No, it's not. It's not. That almost says more of a vet day off than it does an injury or anything. But yeah, it's a lot of minor stuff and a lot of players that are just being held out to make sure that a minor thing doesn't become a major thing. But
Chris Forster talked about rep counts. He was talking about Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey specifically. Well, Trent Williams when he was asked, and he actually said a great bar where he was like, you don't want to let reps in July take away, or reps in, I think he said July, he might have said August, reps in July or August take away reps in January, which kind of sums up to me how cautious the 49ers are being. Like, they don't need to see Mike Evans practice. We saw the video of what happens when Mike Evans practices. We saw how the players talk about Mike Evans when he's in the red zone in just specific situations. So they're well aware of what they have there. Obviously, Stribling's going to be a big part of the offense. So I wouldn't freak out either. I know it's easy to say when you see all these numbers. Like when you see the number 20 and we're talking about, are they even going to practice? Who are these players that they're signing? But what training camp always gets overblown. I would be worried if Evans isn't practicing the week leading up to playing the Rams. I would be worried, if some of these top dogs, these top guys, the core players aren't out there the week leading up to playing against the Rams, which is a situation where it's going to be all hands on deck, not because it's week 1 or anything, but because you want to have everybody available for a team like the Rams. So let's wait to push the panic button until then.
Yeah, of course. Here I am saying, of course, while I'm trying to stoke the flames just a little bit with this massive injury list. But what's interesting? Did you see when the Rams are going to be arriving in Australia?
I did. So they're doing.
I think it's the day before the game, right?
Yeah, they're flying in the day of, and they're probably going to hop on the plane as soon as the clock hits 0. Whereas the 49ers are going a week before. McVay made it seem like it was a lot like London, because I think they did something similar last year. I thought what was interesting was he said, we're going to try to ride the the adrenaline of just it being a game and go from there. They had people fly out, and they basically used them as test subjects to see, okay, how much jet lag did you experience, yada, yada, yada. And they made it seem like, okay, the longer you're there, or I guess if you are there for a few days prior, maybe even a week prior, that it's not going to, something's not going to work out in the same way. So they did enough studies. They did enough of this. they gathered enough information from these test subjects to make it seem like this was a smart way to handle it. So I think it's either going to look really smart or really stupid, depending on. Obviously, we're going to judge it by whatever happens to the result of the game. Even if they lose by 1 point, should have never flown in the day before. But if they win, you can't really point fingers. So it's pretty fascinating that they did choose to do that, though.
Yeah, sending out I wonder how they did that. I'd like to read more about that. They should just take the whole team out there and do a practice game before the game. I wonder if that's like illegal. What if the Rams decided to hold training camp in Melbourne, Australia? Could they do that? And they've been out there for a month before the 49ers show up? Like
that would be wild.
That would be some mental warfare right now. So, how can anyone? Okay, yeah. Ryan's getting into the QB tiers, which we're about to get into. How can anyone want Dak Prescott over Brock Purdy? Can't win the big game to save his life. I know somebody in this podcast that might want Dak Prescott over Brock Purdy.
Right.
So that'll be a fun discussion. But yeah, we are going to get into the QB tiers in a little bit. We haven't quite touched on it yet, Ryan, but we're getting there. A few little things from training camp, nothing major. It sounds like the competition at left guard is not quite settled yet. Connor Colby had been getting the reps so far, and Chris Forrester had already said it kind of sounded like a competition between Connor Colby and Robert Jones. Still that way, KP, or still that way, and it's more like Connor Colby hasn't really held onto that spot like you would hope.
In the politest way, without talking down on him, Chris Forrester made it seem like we need to see more from Connor Colby. So initially he had planned to let Rob Jones and Carver Willis man the first team left guard reps today, but Willis, concussion protocol. So that belonged to Rob Jones. It's less about them two competing and more about Connor Colby not getting those reps, because until today, that was the guy. Like, that was the only guy who was getting those reps. So Forster said Connor made great strides this offseason. Same way it looked like he'd make a big step. Now we're getting back to some live work. So pads are on. You're doing actual football things against other people. And he said, even though it wasn't proved, some of those same holes are still there. To me, that tells me that you're not seeing what you wanted to. You're not seeing the same kind of corrections that you would have liked to have seen. And that's probably why we're here. So not too surprising. We thought that, I don't want to say Colby would regress to the mean, but I just thought always they would roll with a veteran in that spot. So we'll see how it works out come these joint practices and training camp, because you really want to judge these guys when they go against somebody else. But the fact that they are already willing to make a change, already seeing like, hey, all right, it's been 7 practices, time to roll with somebody else. It's probably not a great sign if you're Connor Coleman.
Kyle Shanahan needs to talk to Robert Saleh and have them line Jeffrey Simmons up against the right guard, both of them. That's what they have to do. Handle this guy. Who does better at one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL? But yeah, I mean, that's the way it should be. I don't have a favorite between Connor Colby and Robert Jones. I understand why they would have put Connor Colby there first, given his experience in Robert Jones just entering. And it wasn't like Robert Jones was a free agent acquisition that they gave $10 million plus to.
Right.
That you would expect them to just plug him right in there. It's going to be a competition, but to me, it's a good thing that Colby hasn't necessarily captured the job. Now, I guess ideally he comes out firing on all cylinders and he's just clear cut the guy. You'd love that, but it's good to see them giving that position a fair shake, and hopefully one of those guys proves. You just want one of them to be a good player. That's the 49ers need a good player there, and if not, then they need to find one. Another competition, sort of, just more clarity at a spot was at linebacker. One, Nick Martin has been getting the lion's share of first team reps at the Sam linebacker spot, which I think is important, man. We talked in the offseason about him being unclear whether he was going to be Dre Greenlaw's primary backup or they were actually going to give him a chance at Sam. And it sounds like they're going to give him a chance at Sam because even when Dre Greenlaw took the practice off today, it was Garrett Wallow that came in for Dre Greenlaw. They didn't move Nick Martin over to replace Dre Greenlaw. They kept Nick Martin at Sam. So KP, what's your take on that linebacker spot? Anything surprise you, or is that kind of what you were hoping to see?
No, not really. I would imagine, with Martin being a third round pick, you want to see what you have in him, and you're going to give him every opportunity to lose his way out of that Sam spot. I also think like before, there was, I don't want to say injury, before Greenlaw was sitting out with the twos, they're probably letting Martin run when with the twos. Again, when everybody is healthy. How often that happens, whole different conversation. But I think Martin is going to give them just a much needed boost in athleticism, a much needed boost in
speed,
in run and chase. Yeah, like that's what they were severely lacking last year. At the same time, like he's going to be in some spots this year, especially, the Rams run a bunch of 13 personnel, so 3 tight end sets. He's going to be in a bunch of spots where he's going to be blocked. He's going to be double teamed. He's going to have to take on tackles. So it's going to be ugly too. And I've seen what it looks like when Nick Martin has to, be the head on guy and take on blocks. It's not pretty. It's not what you want. So I'm kind of fascinated to see how often Raheem Morris uses him, and how much they're just going to be just blitz, so he doesn't have to be in disadvantageous situations. So I don't think much of it. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be Greenlaw and Warner, and if anything, it might just be Warner with an extra DB, depending on how much those guys show. We're hearing a lot about the DBs making plays. We also so this is like the most training camp thing possible, right? Of course the DBs are making plays. Did you look at the list? Did you listen to the list of wide receivers we read who are not practicing? If the DBs weren't making plays, I would be worried. I would be terrified. So it's great to hear, guys like Jack Jones are stepping up, but they might have to play in dime situations, in like big nickel situations where you're having extra cornerbacks or safeties, whoever it may be, when the time rolls around. So I would actually think it's going to lean more towards something like that, as opposed to, multiple sets and situations with 3 linebackers when you're not playing the Rams and the Seahawks.
Right. Another spot, if you didn't catch it, another name that popped up on the injury list was Jacob Cowing, who, as we know, has struggled to stay healthy. Right now, it's just a hip flexor strain, so we'll see how serious that is and how much time that takes. But one person that really benefits, with one injury, somebody usually benefits from every injury in some way or another. And it sounds like Jordan Watkins is earning a little bit, and I've been seeing his name pop up pretty consistently in training camp reports. Nick Wagner said Watkins put together a nice camp, and Purdy has faith in him, but he also has had some go through his hands that he probably should have caught. A good opportunity right now for him to carve out a role. Given all the other injuries, the good outweighs the bad. He just needs to be more consistent. But he also said that Purdy in the team's final move the ball scenario, Purdy hit Watkins deep down the left sideline for another score and move the ball. And I think he also found Jordan Watkins in the red zone period of practice. So it sounds like, and Watkins has 4.3 speed. He's a fast player, and I wouldn't say he's just a deep threat. When I saw him at training camp last year, he looked surprisingly. He was a decent size, and he just looked surprisingly well-rounded. He didn't look like somebody who you would pigeonhole into just a deep threat. But, Jacob Cowing stepping out opens the door for Jordan Watkins. So,
it could be 3 weeks at minimum, and that's the last thing you want. I'm glad you said that about Jordan Watkins, because I don't think he's listed. I think he came in the league 5'11", 196, somewhere around there. I don't think that he is one of those gadgety slot type of players. I don't think he's that at all. I actually think, and just based on his usage last year, they tried to line him up in X as that isolated receiver. And if they're hitting him down the sideline, that tells me they're also using him in the same role this year. And maybe he's who they would tag in with for Mike Evans, and obviously Mike Evans is going to be on the field as much as possible. But the fact they're using him in those kind of situations is pretty telling. So good for Watkins, man. And again, if Cowing is out, Watkins is probably the next guy up when it comes to the punt return. So they're going to use him, I would imagine, often in a bunch of scenarios where you need to run coverage off and you need to make the defense honor you. And Brock, man, if you're going to sit on routes underneath, he's going to let it fly, and that's what it sounds like happened today.
Okay, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's podcast. Mike Sando, who always puts out great stuff and puts out his yearly quarterback tier rankings, and these come packed full of quotes and comments from executives and coaches throughout the league. And it's more focused on tiers and tiers of quarterbacks. And all those tiers are organized into rankings. But it's really focused more on who are the tier one guys, the kind of do it all quarterbacks that you consider stars. And then, tier two could be emerging stars. It could be, we'll talk about it. Actually, let's talk about it right now. So tier one, in terms of Mike Sando's quarterback tier list, here's what describes a tier one quarterback. He carries his team each week. The team wins because of him. He expertly handles pure passing situations, and he has no real holes in his game. Okay, so that is a tier one quarterback. And tier one quarterbacks in Mike Sando's list are Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and these are tied. Actually, it's a three-way tie. No, excuse me, it's not. Patrick Mahomes is sitting at first by himself. And then you have a two-way tie between Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford. And then you've got Joe Burrow, and that is the end of tier one. And then you hit tier two. Tier two's description is carries his team sometimes, handles pure passing situations in doses, or has some other dimensions that elevate him above tier three and has a hole or two in his game. Leading tier two, and obviously being somebody that's right on the verge of tier one and tier two, is Lamar Jackson. And then at 6, you've got Justin Herbert. 7, Dak Prescott. 8, tied is Drake May and Jared Goff. And then number 10 is Jordan Love. And then number 11 is Brock Purdy, who is tied with Caleb Williams. And the only other quarterback, there's 3 other quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold are the end of, no, they're not the end of tier two. Oh, tier two goes on for a while. Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, and then the end of tier two. So there's quite a few quarterbacks that come on the tier two ranking that fall behind Brock Purdy. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, and then that's the end of tier 3 and tier 2. And tier 3 starts with Bo Nix. Tier 3, important to just identify what it is because Brock Purdy obviously did not fall within it. He has tier 3 as a legit starter, but needs better running game or defense to win. Lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. Which is interesting that they say that because one of the coaches up here makes a comment about what Kyle Shanahan was able to make of Jimmy Garoppolo. But when I think Jimmy Garoppolo's tenure with the 49ers, I think tier 3. I think legit starter, but needs better running game or defense to win. Lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. But I don't think of that when I think of Brock Purdy. Does that make sense? Like everybody loves to mention the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo was really good in Kyle Shanahan's offense. But when I think of both quarterbacks in Kyle Shanahan's offense, I don't think of them as being in the same tier. I don't know if that makes sense or if you agree with that. But Kyle, or what's your take on all this, man? What do you think of Brock Purdy sitting at 11 in the towards the top of tier 2? And yeah, what are your feelings?
I do not believe so. Speaking of tier 2, so real quick, or sorry, tier 3, the panelists, like they all had the votes. Purdy received 1 vote for tier 1. He had 32 votes for tier 2, and he actually had 15 votes for tier 3, which is kind of surprising. I don't view him as a low volume quarterback at all. I actually think he's one of those guys who needs to throw it 30 times, 35 times a game. And that's when he's more comfortable. He's got to just letting his hair down, letting it fly. I think that's when he's at his best. So I don't think he needs a running game to be successful either. So that I would push back pretty hard on calling him a tier 3 quarterback. I guess it's, to me, that's just you're leaning too much into he's relying or he can't function outside of a Kyle Shanahan offense, which that feels like a stretch. I feel like he would make it. He would make it work because of his scrambling ability and his accuracy. I think he would make it work in just about any offense. Of course, it helps to be in Kyle Shanahan's offense, but I don't think he should be penalized for that, which sounds like exactly what's happening here.
Well, the silly thing is like, do you think Brock Purdy would do well in Ben Johnson's offense?
I think he would light it up in Ben Johnson's offense.
Do you think he would do well in Mike LaFleur's offense?
Like, and most of these are just like
offense.
Shanahan extensions anyway. So who's to say that he wouldn't function in these offenses? Because we have visual evidence that he can carry a team and he has carried a team. I would say, the win-loss record might not be there in 2024 and 2025 to an extent, but like they didn't have good receivers those years, man. And I feel like that has to matter. So let's talk about if he factors into either one. Let's go to tier one. Carries his team each week. Do you think Brock qualifies as a quarterback who carries his team each and every week?
No. That's also kind of, it's such a specific thing to have to
Right.
carry a team every week. Like, I think a lot of the quarterbacks that are in tier one don't carry their team every week. Like, we've seen Patrick Mahomes have bad games. Like, it's just a very general statement, but I get it. We've also seen Patrick Mahomes just single-handedly put everything on his back and win games and make incredible plays. So I know that's what they were trying to say. So, but okay, let's keep you going with what you're saying. I don't want to derail things. Does Brock Purdy carry his team each week? No, I don't think so.
Do you think the team wins because of Brock? I think
Yes.
tier three would make it seem like they were winning in spite of. Do they win because of him? I would say that's a strong yes. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's an easy yes. They absolutely have won many games because of Brock Purdy.
The next one is expertly handles pure passing situations. To me, like that's where he thrives, in those drop back passing situations where he can have the option to scramble. I think he knows the offense so well. And again, like that has to matter, right? Like that's a compliment. He knows where all of his outs are. He knows if one's not open over here, I can come back to the other side of the field and hit 2, 3, or I know where my check down is at all times. So understanding the offense, understanding where your receivers are, like that is what makes a good quarterback a good quarterback. So I think when the bullets are flying, when the 49ers are down, like we've seen in playoff situations or late game situations, 2-minute drills, like that's when they score. They score often in those situations. So I would say that he for sure qualifies there. The next one is has no real holes in his game. He does. So
right.
the red line through that one. But I still at the same time, I feel like he qualifies under just about every other one.
I think Brock Purdy, and this does not mean he needs to move up or anything, but I think Brock Purdy is much closer to being a tier one quarterback than he is a tier three quarterback, which is surprising to me because he got a lot of tier three votes from other coaches. But he has more tier one qualities than he does tier three qualities. And like some of the way, it's the way that Brock Purdy handles the offense and like the way he throws with anticipation, the way how accurate he is, and how on time and on tune with the offense he is, and the way he layers those throws over the middle. Like we've seen Brock Purdy make some throws that there might only be 2 or 3 other quarterbacks in the NFL that can make throws like that. You know, like there's throws that Brock Purdy makes that I don't think Josh Allen can make, and it's not Josh Allen's like fault. It's like Josh Allen's arm is twice as strong as Brock Purdy's, you know, and that in many instances is going to greatly benefit Josh Allen. But in terms of like being able to throw a ball with a certain amount of touch, with a certain amount of arc, so it makes it over a linebacker and then falls into the hands of a receiver before it can get to a safety, you know, it's just math. It's just the you know, how an arc travels. So there's things that Brock does that earns him tier one respect, or that he has tier one attributes. Probably the things holding him back from being a tier one quarterback are obviously his arm strength. He doesn't have one of those just freak arms where he could be falling over and he just flicks it and it takes off down the field. And obviously his size, you know, and that's not necessarily a problem. But if anything with Brock Purdy, the size is just what attributes to him getting hurt maybe a little more often than you would like him to. But he's still strong, man. And so it's hard to bounce around here. Let's read some of the quotes that coaches and executives had to say about Brock Purdy. This is a head coach said, I think Brock Purdy is better than he's given credit for. Kyle Shanahan is great, but I think Brock Purdy, he can see it so fast and he makes quick decisions and he's more athletic than you think. He's a really good player. So that was said by an NFL head coach. This is an offensive coordinator said, Purdy is so impressive to watch in terms of how he creates. The scramble game is awesome. He's really hard to sack. He's in a great system with great players around him. It's just a good fit. And that's kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, I think Brock Purdy would be a good fit in many offenses. Like, yeah, some of them might relate to Kyle Shanahan's, but he'd do fine in Sean McVay. He'd do good. Obviously, he's doing fine in Kyle Shanahan. He'd be fine in Ben Johnson's offense. He'd be great in Andy Reid's offense. He'd be great in Mike McDaniel's offense. Clint Kubiak. These are all very close ties to Kyle Shanahan. Liam Cohen, Jaguars. Brock Purdy would do fantastic with Liam Cohen. Kevin O'Connell. Like, all of the offensive, it's almost like good coaching matters.
Right.
Who
knew?
You mean you need a good offensive coordinator to have a good offense? That is insane.
The infrastructure matters. What a breaking concept, right?
Right.
I don't think he's getting enough credit for. So I think people think because he's like 6'1", he's undersized, that he's small. He's not small at all. Like, he's probably closer to 225 than he is 220. And I think that's what makes him so hard to bring down. I think that, like, him just being sturdy, we'll call him, might be a little sturdier after having a baby. But I think him being sturdy really helps him with his, like, just escaping the pocket, man. He's very tough to bring down, and he escapes a lot. So talking about carrying the team, and this is, I know there's ways to quantify this, but I think if you just watch, if you were to manually chart how many sacks he ran out of, or how many plays that he went from where it was an obvious -6, -7, whatever, tackle for loss, and he turned it into a 2-yard gain. He turned it into an incomplete pass. He just avoided a negative play. I think that would really change how people change the perception of what he is, because, like, he does that probably 4 or 5 times a game where the 49ers would have no shot. If he didn't if he didn't kind of hide some of the offensive line's deficiencies. Another one, what else we got? So reading off the other two tier 2 list, or has other dimensions that elevate him above tier 3, which is what I just talked about, right? The escape, the ability to escape, the ability to be one of the least sacked quarterbacks. I also think his aggressiveness makes him far above what you would consider a tier 3 quarterback. Like, he is a gunslinger, and I think that's what wins. It's going to, like, we see it in the interceptions, like, it's going to come back and bite him. But there are 6 or 7 other plays where you're like, man, if he didn't make that aggressive decision. So when I say aggressiveness, I don't just mean throwing into coverage. I also mean, like, making aggressive decisions. That is more so a thing than just making a quick decision, right? I just know the offense. It comes back to that. So I think he does a lot of things aggressive, and which is a positive, which is a compliment. And I think that it takes him out of any kind of tier 3 conversation. I would love to just sit down and see what the people voting him in tier 3 are saying. And I would like to know as well, like, how much of that is just, lazy Kyle Shanahan quarterback and it's Kyle's offense. I would imagine a lot of it is that. I also think we're going to have a much different view of this player when he gets the opportunity to throw to a wide receiver one again, because, again, we're 2 years removed from 2023. If we were doing this exercise then, and maybe people were a little reserved because that was his first full year of starting, but when he had, like, legitimate ball players around him, he was he was in the MVP race. It's like 5th in the MVP race or whatever. So now that he has a big body like Deshaun Stribling, now that he has a red zone monster like Mike Evans, and assuming George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey come back, assuming Debo is able to contribute just a little bit, right? His contract doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be heavily involved, but having a familiar face in Debo, and then all these other options potentially, like a Christian Kirk, Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing, having some speed on the field once again, because it's been a few years since they've had speed. It's been a few years since they've been able to run the kind of routes that Kyle Shanahan wants to run. They haven't really had the opportunity to run those 15 to 18 yard, like, hit target that area of the field, which is where Brock Purdy wants to throw the ball. So I would imagine he's viewed much differently after this season, after playing alongside the weapons that are on the roster.
Well, and I view Brock Purdy differently after last season. And yeah, he got hurt and he missed time, but he was also working with the least talented offense he's ever had. And I thought there were elements. One of the qualities of, like, a tier 1/tier 2 quarterback is, do you elevate the offense around
100%.
you? Can you be the reason that they move the ball down the field? And I thought Brock Purdy was the reason they moved the ball down the field many times last season. He came in and he threw 20 interceptions or 20 touchdowns in 9 games. And yeah, it came with 10 interceptions, and that's kind of Brock's thing. And again, that just goes toe to toe with the aggressiveness and the willingness to push the ball down the field. And for him to come in and play like that, like if you would have extrapolated Brock Purdy last season into a full season, which I get it, doesn't really work like that, he would have been right around 4,500 yards, 40 touchdowns, and again, 20 interceptions. But he also doesn't have his rushing stuff here. How many rushing touchdowns did he have last year? 3.
3. Yeah. But he ran for 147 yards, so it's not like he's adding a little bit. 147 on 33 carries. And again, like how much of those are just the 9-yard gains? Like those are huge. And he had multiple, like the 10, the 11. Like those are ones where he's holding the ball out to extend for a first down. Like those matter, man. Keeping the offense on the field, keeping the defense off the field too, which was huge last year.
What would you say on the tier 2 list? It says the last bullet says has a hole or two in his game. What would you say? What, in your opinion, what are the holes in Brock Purdy's game?
I think when defenses do, when he faces a good disguise, like a very good disguise, I think there are times when he's just throwing to spots. I think he admitted he just can't see over the middle, where he's throwing to spots, as opposed to just really, really processing what's going on. And that's when we're talking about when the guy mentioned Dak. What I would say the difference between those two is Brock is literally throwing with anticipation and just, understanding, hey, this is what the route calls for. I got this look. I'm going to trust the offense is right here. Whereas like a quarterback like Dak would be able to read like exactly what the safety and the linebacker are doing. He's not guessing. And that's why, the turnovers aren't there with him. I guess that's the biggest difference. So I would just say like a complex coverage, usually over that, which is weird because, the further down the field, the better he is. But for whatever reason, that's 7 to 9 yard area, usually right around the linebacker, right around the hashes, is when he gets into the most trouble.
Yeah, let's read the rest. I was reading some of Dak Prescott's quotes from coaches and execs. Just because of what he's done, you have to give him a tier 2, but he's like a bottom end tier 2. A defensive coach said it is the system and everything around it that is going to help him. In that system, Jimmy Garoppolo took them to the Super Bowl, but when he went anywhere else, you struggle to say he was a 3.
That's so lazy. That is as lazy as it gets.
And
it ignores a lot of what he did too when he took over in 2022. And then, of course, 2023. So like we have examples. We can go through like the game log last year when they're in games. So I actually think some of his worst games statistically were some of the best games that he played. Like the game against the Browns, I thought he made so many throws and just decisions. And he threw for 168 yards in that game. But I thought he played as well as a quarterback could in that game. And you could probably do the same thing in 2024. So I think just looking at box scores or going based off what you know about the offense. Yeah, thanks for chiming in and telling us that Shanahan's going to elevate the quarterback. That doesn't mean that's the same for every quarterback, man. I really think whoever that head coach is, whoever that executive is really selling short on Brock elevating. And again, like his legs are huge, man. Like the ability to add not just rushing, but the ability to scramble and extend plays and give guys more just longer to get open, because that's what they've needed the last couple of seasons, because they haven't had, that Brandon Ayuk wasn't out here, that the Mike Evans, it wasn't out there. So I think just his ability to create is being undersold.
There's nobody that thinks that this offense looked the same under Brock Purdy as it did with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, there's just anybody that was watching the 49ers, the moment Brock Purdy took over full time, like that game against the Dolphins, and it always looked different. Like there's just no way that you could watch this and be like, yeah, well, it looked good with Jimmy Garoppolo too. It looked nowhere nearly as good as when Brock Purdy took over as it did with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not even the same. And again, when I think of Jimmy Garoppolo in the 49ers offense, I think of the tier 3 quarterback description. When I think of Brock Purdy in the 49ers offense, I think of a tier 2 quarterback at the very least. And I'm not saying Brock Purdy should be a tier 1 quarterback, but I'm just saying that he has more in common with tier 1 traits than he does a tier 3 or anything Jimmy Garoppolo was doing. Last quote says, if he can't flip his hips, he can't make throws because all of his power is in his lower body. Another defensive coach said,
what? But that's how they're being taught to throw. What?
Right. That's just, I think he's talking about like some of the freak throws you see somebody like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen make, where they're off base, they're falling, they're running, and they could just flick things. But yeah, that's pretty much how you're taught to throw, is to set your feet and whip your hips. But anyways, but that same defensive coach does go on to say, but the dude is special. He sees things before they happen, and like George Kittle said, he runs like a water dragon. What does a water dragon run like? I'm gonna have to Google what water dragon running. Water dragon running. I'm doing it right now. No. Oh, okay. He's talking about that lizard that runs on the water.
Oh, I got you.
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what part of that lizard running on the water looks like Brock Purdy.
Interesting.
But we'll go with it. We'll go with it. He's stronger than you think. He's faster than you think. He's better than you think. Talks more shit than you think. Solid too.
I can imagine. Yeah. He seems like a little chirper.
Right. So to me, this whole, taking all of this as a whole, I do think that Brock Purdy is receiving. There's all these people get so upset about, maybe upset's the wrong word. They get up in arms about where Brock Purdy is ranked among the league, where the respect he's getting. When I read this and I see these quotes from people around the league, I think that Brock Purdy is getting his due. I don't think that this list disrespects him.
He's 11th, man.
Right. He's 11th on the list. Like, this was the last pick of the draft a few years ago. Like, this is, what is he? 6'1", 220-pound quarterback. Like, he defies a lot of odds. And I just think that the fact that we get to have this conversation in debate whether he has tier 1 traits or tier 2 traits it's just awesome. It's a great story. If they would have won that Super Bowl, which they should have, Hollywood would have already been on it. That's the type of story that Brock Purdy has. But Strawberry React says he kind of does, to be honest. When Kittle said it, I couldn't unsee it. I'm gonna have to watch the water dragon running. I'll change this to a GIF. I mean, should we let everybody watch the water dragon running?
Sure.
Let me see. Okay. Let me open this one. There it is. I can try and zoom in here, and then let's share it on the screen. This is premium content right here. Let me share my screen here. Boom, boom. So many buttons. This should be it. Share. There it is. There is the water dragon running. So now when I see Brock Purdy running, I may see the water dragon. He's kind of like flopping his legs out to the side. So I would have to look, Brock Purdy does have a little bit of that Kyler Murray kid in trouble run. It's not
take
quite
20 steps to get 10 yards.
Right. He does have a little bit of that, but you can tell Brock Purdy runs with some serious power too. He's got a good lower body. And he's strong. The comment about him throwing with his legs, you're like, go on.
I'm pretty sure he ran relatively well. I know the 10-yard split thing was a thing for a little while, but he's a good athlete. Let's just say that. Like he's a guy. He might not be able to break off. Actually, that's not true. I was gonna say he might not be able to break off like a long yarder, which he had. I think he had like a 26-yard or something like that last year. But the fact that he's able to
4.8 40, but he had a 1.55 10-yard split.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that split's insane.
So he moves. He's just under 6 foot. Me and Brock Purdy are basically the same height. 6 foot and 5/8. 29-inch arms, 9.25-inch hands. So yeah, he's about as, like, in terms of what you would think of an NFL quarterback, he's almost as far away from that as you can expect. But he still finds a way, man, and that's the part that's exciting. In 2023, he was a tier 3 quarterback. In 2020, okay, and then he's been a tier 2 ever since. Okay, so, and he did go, he like went up, came down a little bit in 2025, and then came back up a little bit in 2026. So kind of, again, to me, it seems like this is about right. This is about where you would expect him. Let's do one last thing before we get out of here. I'll ignore the tier 1 quarterbacks. If KP, if you could magically plug in another quarterback in replace of Brock Purdy. So I'm just going to run through the list. I'm assuming you take Lamar Jackson over Brock Purdy.
Wait, What's the stipulation? Does it have to
If
be?
I'm just going to say the name of the quarterback, would you take that quarterback over Brock Purdy in Kyle
Okay.
Shanahan's offense?
Sure. You want me
Lamar
to name
Jackson.
one of the
No. I'll name him. You just tell me if you take him.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, Lamar.
Okay. Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert. Yeah.
You would. Okay. Dak Prescott.
Yes.
Okay. Drake May.
Yes.
Jared Goff.
No. I by the way, Goff deserves to be here. I know a lot of people are like complaining about it. I think Goff is a baller, but too much of a stature for me. And I think you need a little movement here.
Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're at Brock Purdy. So essentially everybody but Jared Goff that's above Brock Purdy in this list, you would take over Brock Purdy, which seems natural. That's fine. Yeah. And then, I don't need to go behind him, do I? Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Okay.
Jaden Daniels.
No, shot in hell.
Baker Mayfield.
No, not even close to the same quarterback.
Sam Darnold.
No.
Trevor Lawrence.
No.
Jalen Hurts.
No.
Okay. All right.
So I actually don't think I would say a lot of those guys we just said are closer to tier 3, honestly. We're still waiting on that Trevor Lawrence breakout.
Right. But I kind of feel the same way about Justin Herbert.
I think
he's obviously a total freak, the prototype quarterback.
Sure.
But
I think that is like the peak variance guy too. And I keep saying, I love variance. To me, like he could put it wherever, whenever, at every level of the field. And like every time it seems like you're watching the Chargers, it seems like that offensive line, he's playing off he's having to do that. The thing where that executive said, hey, he needs to be able to make those fadeaway type throws. Like Herbert can do all of those things. Like, of course, he makes boneheaded throws, but I would trust Herbert over the course of a 17-game season playing around the same offense with the same wide receiver and the same offensive line over I would Brock. Yes, I actually don't think it's too close.
Strawberry React said, how come Dak doesn't get knocked for weapons? I don't know. He's always had some good ones. But I think knocking a quarterback for weapons is stupid to begin with. But I get where you're coming from. But in terms of the voting, Dak Prescott had 12 tier 1 votes and 36 tier 2 votes, and then just 2 tier 3 votes. And if you scroll down to Brock Purdy had 1 tier 1 vote, 34 tier 2, and 15 tier 3. So, I think it's interesting, especially when, asking you those questions just now. It kind of like nestled Brock right into where you would kind of just expect him to be. And again, that's just your opinion. These are just these guys' opinions. But what I like about this tier list is this is a gathering of many, many opinions. And I think it puts Brock in a relatively good place. Now, if I were ask the same things, I don't know Justin over Brock. I get it. He's got all the things to make a perfect quarterback, but at some point it just has to start happening, and it hasn't necessarily happened for him yet. But obviously there's so many factors that happen around it. Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy, I can go back and forth. I like Dak Prescott a lot too. If he could just stop saying "here we go" before every snap, that'd be
here we
nice.
go.
I hate it. I have to turn the volume down when the Cowboys are on offense. So Drake May, I think Dak it's a little too soon. But this
Dak
quote right here from somebody.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Dak, go.
I was just going to say, Dak has like a computer processor to me. Like he is gets it right away, almost where he can see it. He knows what you're doing. Like he understands. He's not fooled by anything. Like the same things
seems
where I
very
said,
smooth. He doesn't seem like a rattled type of guy.
Sure. I would imagine Herbert's going to look a little different too with going from Greg Roman to Mike McDaniel might be a little difference.
Right. Drake May, I think it's a little early. And this quote from here says he's a high 2 and he's on his way to a 1.
Yeah, he is, man. He is the one to me. I'm surprised that more people aren't on the hype train. I know that obviously they just came from the Super Bowl and whatnot, but I thought he was the number 1 QB in that draft. Like I was very confident. Like I just watching a bunch of ACC football, he was always the guy at North Carolina. Even as a freshman, I remember against Florida State, and he just nonstop, always the one making plays. And I imagine with him having AJ Brown, it's going to look a lot different. Like he's going to be so much better, and his athleticism is off the chain, man. He's about as good as it gets, and he has a bazooka for an arm too. So I would not be surprised if he's a tier 1 next year.
I wouldn't take Jared Goff over Brock Purdy. Jordan Love. I don't think I'd take him over Brock Purdy, but we're starting to get to the point where it's splitting hairs. Where he's ranked just ahead of Brock Purdy, so they're right there. Caleb Williams, I think, has a much higher ceiling than Brock Purdy. He's just like that type of freak quarterback. Again, it's just early, so maybe that question for me at least will be easier to answer. But again, my takeaway, just to repeat myself, is I think that list says Brock Purdy's getting respect, man. Like he's solidly towards the upper half of tier 2. They have him as the 11th best quarterback in the NFL. You know, there are 32 of those.
Look at who you're comparing him to, like number 1 overall pick, number 1 overall pick, number 1 overall pick. Like it's all the top 10, or I know Love was drafted in the 20s or whatever, but the majority of guys you're comparing him to were, in the most literal sense, number 1 overall picks.
Right, in top 5. So it's awesome. It's awesome. Again, I don't think there's obviously differences of opinion. I don't think there's just anything to be offended by in that list. I think it's pretty sweet, man. I think overall that is a massive compliment to Brock Purdy. It's a massive compliment to Kyle Shanahan. And I think it's a massive compliment to Brock Purdy that his ranking went up after last season.
Right.
Because it's not like the 49ers were world beaters. They shocked the world by beating the Eagles in the playoffs in Philadelphia.
Throwing to DeMarcus Robinson. Like that was his dude. It was DeMarcus Robinson and Juwan Jennings. Like those were his main targets. So the fact that he's moved up and that he's thought of in a better light after 2 years removed from having to play with the Avengers. That's why I think the arrow is still trending up, because now we get to see him play with a Hall of Famer. Now we get to see him play with the 6'2", 4'3" wide receiver. Now we get to see him play with Debo again. So he's going to get some familiarity, and he's going to get some bigger body targets. A guy who's high variance is going to take chances, but he's also going to put the ball in a position for them to make catches. So I think, a lot of these guys can go up or down or whatever, but I would not be surprised if this time next year we're talking about, 7, 8, 9 for Purdy.
Well, and that for some reason it just popped in my head, that one quote from Kyle Shanahan where he's like, "I want Brock to be here as long as I'm here." You know what I mean? That tells you just how. And Kyle Shanahan doesn't bullshit anybody. Like that tells you how much Kyle Shanahan loves him and loves him in his offense, and how good of a fit he feels like he is. And we know that Kyle Shanahan has always just wanted an offensive coordinator that's on the field. And from the throws that Brock Purdy makes and his understanding of what he sees, I feel like he's on that level. And that's what we need to start seeing from when it comes to needs improvement. Like Brock Purdy already seems like he's got the nails on this offense, but you just want to see just a little bit more. It should just look that much easier for him this season. We'll see who's on the field though. Could get weird. Things always get weird with this team. KP, anything else you want to close off with?
No, man, I love talking about this because I feel like hearing other opinions and like how people think this way, I think that makes for great conversation. This is what it's about.
Yeah, I wish we had more time with that list to read the quotes about other quarterbacks. I think that's, if you disagree with something,
roll our eyes at everything.
Right. If you disagree with something, read what they have to say, because there's each one of the quarterbacks has like 4 or 5 quotes from NFL executives and coaches explaining why they think that guy's there. So it's or shouldn't be there. So it's interesting. But I appreciate everybody, man. I appreciate everybody for hanging out in the chat, contributing. Thank you for being here, giving us some of your time. If you haven't already, like the stream. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Help the channel grow. We're moving. It's going to start picking up a lot too when the season starts. If you're on the podcast, make sure you come over to our YouTube channel at the Striking Gold Podcast and take part in this. Takeaway times are going to be crazy. And make sure you jump on the stream, leave us a 5-star review if you deem us worthy. We'd appreciate it. But you already know what it is, man. It's Captain Niner. Thank you. Appreciate it. It is time to get up out of here. I say it a million times. Appreciate you guys for another episode. That's KP. I'm Rob. This is Striking Gold, and we are signing out.